Hello, good evening, and welcome back. Get ready for the misogynist hate comments. As maternity leave law changed for Attorney General Suella Braverman. So, what is it? Well, the government is to update the law so that the Attorney General can take 6 months maternity leave. Should that happen? No. And it's quite simple, but for a plurality of reasons. But most simple is if you want somebody, or you hire someone, you make a contract with somebody to do something, and then they just go an eye on that, and they're out of it for half a year, and you've got to find a replacement, and of course pay them as well. But let's just focus on, the importance of the country. As clearly she's pivotal in her role. That if you then have somebody else standing in for 6 months, not quite going to do the job, in which case you might say, well, that's not fair, because although there is somebody standing as an interim, all they're doing is relaying the new mother's decisions and votes. They're not doing anything for themselves, and therefore it is still the new mother that is making those decisions. In which case, okay, so you're saying the new mother still has the same workload, is still going to be doing just as well at work after birth as before. So either it's a simple job for them, in which case they'd probably have a better position, in which case no, or then they're not focusing at all on the new child, which is a horrific environment to raise a child up in. One that, is just the second priority, if that, because work has to come first, and that is no healthy environment in which to raise a child. So either or, it is not really going to work. And let's move on to some other reasons. And before we do, just to give some more context for this, let's go back to the classic Understanding Society study, which researched a couple thousand new mothers. Okay, cool. And they found that fewer than 1 in 5 of all new mothers, and 29% of first-time mothers, returned to full-time work in the first 3 years after maternity leave, falling to 15% after 5 years. So, as you can see, the vast majority of women who have children do not wish to go back to full-time work. And might that be because there is something more fulfilling than working for a wage? Might it be that family is more important than the career? At least for women, anyway. And that 17% of women leave employment completely in the 5 years following childbirth, and my bet is they're envied by most of the other 83%, compared to 4% of men. Which, seeing as that is such a small amount, it is kind of what you would expect from a random sample anyway. A woman's likelihood of returning to work in the years after birth is independent of the number of children she has. What matters to her likelihood of working is her employment status before the child is born. Right, yep, don't want to go back to full-time work, obviously. In the year before birth, the man was the main earner in 54% of couples. This increases to 69%, nice, percent 3 years after birth. And so on and so on. That we see that the vast majority of women do not wish to go back to full-time work after having children. Fair enough. So does that mean if you're hiring as a business, you might go, well, I want this person to stick with the company, and this lady wants to have children, and we know that statistics bear out that once they have children, they change their mind, as is the case. Can you decide to hire someone else instead? No, of course not. So you have to take that hit. Is that good for the company? No. Is that good for the individual, kind of purposefully misleading them? No. Okay, fine. Is it good for the rest of society or civilization that has invested in training them up to get to that position? Because sure, they've got student loans and are technically in debt, but then they wouldn't be paying it back. So is the rest of the country getting a return on the investment? No. So none of this really makes sense. But the only pushback from this to say why it isn't such a good thing isn't any of the factually accurate statements I've just laid out for you, but instead, no, that this should go as well for paternal leave. That should be the same of 6 months. Which, we all appreciate to have it equal for both parties, but let's be real, the main reason that's being pushed is because then, we can go for equality, knowing that men won't take it as much as women will. But it's not really addressing the core of the issue, as I've just laid out. So, Labour leader Sir Keir Starmer said his party would back the bill, adding the change should have been brought in a long time ago. The party's shadow cabinet officer, Rachel Reeves, said the measures were a small but significant step forward, but the government needed to go further and make provision for paternity, adoption, and shared parental leave. Introducing the new measures in a written statement, the Prime Minister said, "The choice between taking leave to recover from childbirth and care for a newborn child or resigning from office is not acceptable in modern times." And why not? Surely, if you've got such a demanding job, and now you've just welcomed a new one to the world, firstly, congratulations, but secondly, isn't it quite an easy decision to make? And with that decision, again, the choice isn't because of the law, it's just because of being a moral human being. Johnson acknowledged the provisions needed to be made for leave for adoption, sickness and other circumstances, but hasn't done them yet. It's just being rushed through because he likes her. She's a woman of colour, don't you know? But for what it's worth, and there are other examples of bringing their baby to the Commons chamber. It's like, wow, you're trying to make a statement. Don't use your baby like that, please. But for the other side, father of 3 Conservative MP, Bim Afalami, was the first dad able to vote by proxy when he took paternity leave, trying to balance it out. It is good to have MPs who have skin in the game, that they're not going to go for short-term rewards and the social state of robbing their children or unborn children or future children or grandchildren for the short-term gain now, because they're actually invested in their children's well-being. And that is definitely something to be applauded, and why previously there's been little faith in leaders or Prime Minister candidates who do not have children, because you're hoping that actually they're going to want what's best for the future because they've got skin in the game as well. But this is where it really comes down to the difference between men and women, as bad as that is to say. And of course everybody must be treated as an individual, yes, but you've also got to understand the facts of life, and this does have to go into calculations when trying to predict the future. So to wrap up, let's go through what parental rights are in the UK, just to revise. Women are entitled to up to 52 weeks maternity leave. Yep, an entire year. How's their job going to hold out? If they can take a year's leave and the company stays just fine, maybe their job wasn't that important. They must take at least 2 weeks leave after the baby is born, or 4 weeks if they work in a factory. Good, and by all means take more. They are eligible to be paid for 6 weeks at 90% of their average weekly earnings, and 33 weeks at £149 per week, or 90% of their average weekly earnings if lower. Fathers can take 2 weeks statutory paternity leave at £149 a week. Good. Definitely for postnatal depression. That's vital in order to make sure that not only the baby's okay, but also the mother, as that does have not so often, but it is reasonable for severe consequences for the mother afterwards. And some couples are also entitled to shared parental leave of up to 50 weeks and 37 weeks of pay. So of course, families are important, and being able to support the family is also important, in which case work is required. So, this is where the differences between men and women come in. That the woman is there, protecting the child to be hurt from things, essentially, and making sure that they don't get themselves hurt. And then the man is there as the encouraging disciplinarian, making sure that they're socially able and aren't hurt by people. It is to develop their character. The difference between the feminine influence and the masculine influence, which is quite often overlooked, but both parties have a role to play. And because the woman is there to make sure that the child actually stays alive, that the man is there to make sure that they progress and are developed, then it is quite important to have a male role model who is working, who is practicing what they preach, or preaching what they practice if you prefer, in order to show, yes, this is how you become an adapted human of the society, and this is what you do in order to garner respect and make a living for yourself and those around you. So, should the law have changed? No. If her job is that vital, then you can't have her away that long. If you can afford to have her away that long, then maybe pick somebody else. But as always, let me know what you guys think down below. Am I missing something? And no, it's more important to have a more predictable career path, because when it comes to raising the children, if you do need added costs, it's important to have those options there. And children are very important, so we shouldn't be seen in any way whatsoever to be punishing new parents or people for having children at all. Either way, let me know down below. Always intrigued to hear what you guys have to say. And as always, until next time, have a good one.